levels here. All right, let's see. Oh, beautiful. Kelly, if I could get you to... Oh, here, and you put your headphones on there.
Okay.
And is the volume good on that? Is it too loud?
It's a little too loud.
Little too loud.
Yeah.
Okay, so how about that? And how about down there? You want to lower it? Yeah, that's good?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. So just give me a little test on the mic there so I can adjust.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. It sounds like I'm echoing a bit.
Yeah, because you're too far away. You got to get right up to it. Yeah, or pull it right up to you. Yeah.
like I'm kissing it.
Yeah. Basically, yeah, that's basically what you got to do. Now, if you're gonna project, you can move back. And the echo that you're hearing is actually just the echo from the room coming into the headphones, but it's not coming through the microphone necessarily. Sometimes it does, depending on how loud you get. But for the most part, it's all you're just hearing the actual noise of the room. But let me just go in here and check something like that there. Just as I suspected. Let's do mid. Okay, talk again.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, so now we're going to adjust here. Keep going.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Keep going. Read something from the book so that it's constant.
All right. Let's see. Okay, baby William Henry Pullman, often called the informal Willie throughout his life, was born to American parents on the island of Borneo, and I would not be surprised if he were the only Civil War Army member native to such a remote place. Why Borneo? Willie's parents, the Reverend William J. and Theodosia R. Scudder Pullman, were Christian missionaries with the American Board of Foreign Missions to China. They were passionate about spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ, and this calling didn't start with Willie's parents' generation. His paternal grandfather, Daniel Pullman, was known for his devout faith and benevolent Christian deeds. The missionary gene ran on both sides of Willie's family, which included many generations of both religious leaders and otherwise high achievers.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, now should I be looking up at you or over that way?
Yeah, no, the cameras are just a fly on the wall. So
okay.
Talk to me. Yeah, we're not performing to the cameras.
Okay, yeah.
Although sometimes when I'm being goofy, I might mug to the camera, but it's just the audience is eavesdropping on us creating the show. That's the idea.
Okay.
Okay. All right, and then let me pull up the show. Man, I am swamped. I need to win the lottery.
I've been trying.
Haven't we all, right?
Yes.
Haven't we all? And I'm stupid about it, too, because I only play when the jackpot is at like $500 million.
Same here.
Yeah.
Well, I buy scratch-offs regularly, but if it's Powerball, it's got to be like at least $500 million.
Yeah.
Before I start playing.
Yeah. I don't know why I think that way. It's not necessarily the smartest way to play the lottery because everybody else is doing it, you know?
Right. And if not enough people are buying tickets, that the jackpot doesn't get that high. But
Right. Yeah. So, whatever. We're humans. That's what we do. We do things that don't make much sense.
Right. Well, and it's a 1 in a 292 million shot, but that's
at least it's a shot.
That's better than 0 in 200.
That's true. That's true, I guess. Oh God. All right, and then let me do that. I can just turn that off there. I don't need that. Okay. Oops. There we go. All right. Good. Okay. So I am ready if you are ready. Are you ready?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. It'll all come back to you.
Okay. Well, I have it here for details because I don't always remember details, but
yeah, I'm the same way. I'm really bad with that actually. I used to have like a steel trap of a mind, and then somewhere along the way, and I say this as a joke, but like I think it might be true. when I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, I was outside and I was going down into my basement, and the stairs to the basement were outside, and it had just snowed, and I forgot to bring the shovel up from the basement, so I had to go down snowy cement stairs, and I was wearing my slippers, and I slipped and fell back and whacked the back of my head on the step. But luckily there was 4 inches of snow, which I think kind of padded the blow, but it was still a concrete step underneath. And honestly, I've never been the same since that day. And so I don't know, but I also was in a bad relationship then with who she made me crazy. So I could have been a coincidence. I don't know. And that might have ruined me, but we'll see. We'll see how it all works out in the end. All right. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll start the show here, and let me get that lined up right there. I'm just going to turn that down a bit because sometimes this thing comes in loud. I don't want to blow your ears out, and then I'll turn you back up. All right, here we go.
From the Gettysburg Museum of History Studios,
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, everybody, and hello to you patrons who are watching live as the First Lieutenants. What a perk. What a perk. How exciting for you that you get to see this and hear this before everybody else does. Today, we are talking about a book called Cease Firing, Life and Death at the Swope Manor by Kellie B. Gormly. If you watch AG Today, you might remember, maybe a month ago now. When was that? December?
Early December,
It was
yes.
early December. Kellie came on the show for a little bit and talked about her book, and now we're going to talk about it a little bit more in depth. It was actually, it was our Christmas show. It was the last show of the, So, Kellie, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
It's good to have you. All right. So, cease firing. This book, as I was reading through, it's very personalized.
Yes.
Right? You have a personal connection to the Swope Manor. Go ahead, share it with the audience.
Sure. Well, yes, I do have. I'm definitely not a facts only kind of person when I'm telling
Right.
history. When I write about it for publications, I need to be a little more formal. But but here with the book, I operate kind of like the narrator in our town. I'm a very active storyteller. Like I'm standing at the edge of the stage saying, and over here, this happened, and this person said this and felt this.
Right.
But I really wanted to personalize this and make it my own story. But most of all, what I wanted to do was take historical figures and humanize them and make them real to us, because so often, when we read about someone who lived in a totally different time, it's not like someone we knew personally who passed away at some point. If it's someone that's generations back, they can almost be like cartoon characters in a way. They're like, but it's sometimes hard to think of them as real people who even if they lived in a totally different time than us, they had a radically different world. They're still human beings who have the same kind of needs and wants and feelings, and that's what I really wanted to tap into. So my personal connection to the Swope Manor, it started back in the early 2000 teens, I believe it was. I was a feature writer at the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review.
Okay.
And the couple that owns the Swope Manor is from Western Pennsylvania. And
There's a connection there.
right. And we had heard in the features department about this really nice bed and breakfast that had opened, and people in greater Pittsburgh owned it. And everyone knows that I'm obsessed with Gettysburg. Yeah, I mean, it's I remember even at the office, we could be talking about our weekend plans. I'd say, I'm going to Gettysburg, and people say, Gettysburg again? Like, haven't you been there? Like, yeah, but it never gets old,
It really doesn't. As old as it is, it never gets old.
No. It doesn't. No. And I don't get me wrong. I love variety. I love seeing a lot of different places, but I honestly think if a genie were to come out of the bottle and say, you have a choice, you can go all around the world and never go to Gettysburg again, or just go to Gettysburg, I'd probably choose Gettysburg.
Yeah, me too.
Yes,
Well, that's why I moved here. I can't get enough of it.
Yeah. I think I might do that someday too. So and so I wrote a story about the Swope Manor, and then I came out within the next year to check it out myself, and I just fell in love with the place. But what really drew me was the history, and especially the Lieutenant Pullman story.
Yeah. Now, for people who don't know off the top of their head, the Swope Manor is on the corner of Stratton Street and York Street.
Yes.
And it's this big brick house. It's a B&B now.
Yes, it's a red brick house.
Beautiful place.
It is.
And you can go and stay there. And so now after you read Kellie's book, you can go stay there and read the book again, sitting in the place where
yes,
these stories take place.
And that's where I wrote most of the book was sitting.
Did you?
Yeah, was sitting in the Swope Manor because
Okay.
that's where I really feel it.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a writer thing, if you're if you're in an actual place, you really feel it more than when I'm in my living room or at a library or somewhere. And so what I saw here was fundamentally two war stories.
Mm-hmm.
There was the civilian war story, and that's the story about the Swope family that lived in this mansion, and they were high society people. There was a bank president, a doctor, a congressman, and so there's their story and their history, their lives, who they were and what they experienced during the war, and the story of this house and its many evolutions, and then there's a soldier story.
Uh-huh.
And basically my book is about how those two worlds collided under this roof, because the Swope family prior to 1863 had nothing to do with Lieutenant Pullman, but their stories both came together under this one roof. And so what I wanted to focus on today was Lieutenant Pullman.
Yeah.
And you had asked about the personal connection. Well, I started coming here as often as I could and just read more and more about the history. And as a writer, I get really, really excited about a virgin story that no one's done before.
Right, sure, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, Gettysburg has been written about over and over and over again. So
what more could you add to it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to find the story no one's told before,
Right.
and there were no published reports about the Swope family, and there was a book written decades ago that had information about Lieutenant Pullman and had his letters that we transcribed.
Okay.
And that's in the appendix, but this felt like it was like I had stumbled across a history goldmine. But what really clinched it to me was that I discovered that Lieutenant Pullman, the soldier who died at the Swope, he shares my birthday, which is today, January 10th.
Oh, well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
So you get to be on Addressing Gettysburg on your birthday. No better birthday present in the world.
Absolutely.
But you told me before the show that you went to a Roman bath.
I did. Yeah.
Which I'd never heard of, but it's in West Virginia.
Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. West Virginia is the weirdest shaped state. I mean,
It really is.
Yeah, if you look at a picture of it, I'm a cat person. It kind of reminds me of a cat sticking its paw out and scratching,
I can see that.
like when it scratches in the litter box. And Berkeley Springs is like right there at the wrist, I think, but it's very close to the Maryland border, and then you're Maryland for a while, and then Pennsylvania. So yeah, I like to go there once a year to get a Roman bath and the famed mineral waters and a massage.
I got to try this out now.
It's
this
really cool.
Roman bath concept.
Yeah, it's really cool. So I wanted to start here by I wanted to read one of Willie's letters, particularly one he wrote on his birthday, and let me say first of all that I think Willie's experience was a lot like most soldiers during the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that makes his story so special is that he's just so articulate in telling the story, and letters are just so precious.
Yeah.
And he was a very gifted writer. He wrote a series of very, very moving letters to mostly to his sister Mary, who was back at home in Albany. I'll just give you a really quick background about who he was. And another thing that makes him very unique is that he was born in Borneo.
Yeah.
To American parents, but they were Christian missionaries. And they were from upstate New York, the Albany area, but they were Christian missionaries in Borneo. And the Pullman family, they seem to have a lot of misfortune and a lot of premature death, and perhaps a more contemporary example might be the Kennedy family.
Yeah.
It's
a really sad story. His family story, the Kennedys too, but I mean
Yes.
his family story is really sad, especially Well, go ahead and tell it. Yeah.
Yes. So he was one of 5 children originally. Only 2 of them survived. And infant mortality was very high back then. But only he and his older sister Mary survived, and his mother died in childbirth with the 5th child. So he was a very young boy when his mother died. He and his sister Mary, they lost 3 siblings and their mother, and all they had was their father, and they were over here in this foreign country, and the father is focused on his ministry, so he made the difficult decision, even though he describes in a letter that I have in this chapter how lonely he felt. He'd lost his wife and several kids, but he felt it was best for them to go back to America to be raised with a mother's touch. So he sent them to their aunt, Elizabeth McClure, and that's where they did the rest of their growing up in Albany, New York. So,
and being a missionary is not safe work.
No,
and he's over there in Asia, and I don't even know what's going on in Asia at that time, but
Right.
I'm imagining, well, based on what happened to him, I'm imagining that it's not very safe. It's kind of dangerous.
It's definitely dangerous work, and we don't know for sure how his father died, but there are 2 potential possibilities. He was attacked by pirates, or he was just in a shipwreck.
Okay.
So it was a wild world, and it was definitely not a safe place, and that's why his father, the Reverend William Pullman, felt they were better off in America with a family and,
Sure.
and being raised with a mother's touch. So here we have from Hooker's headquarters. That's General Joseph Hooker.
Right.
And it's in January 1863, and the larger context of what was happening then is that we're in the 3rd year of the war now, and it's January 1863. So the most recent big thing that happened was the Battle of Fredericksburg. That was in December 1862 in Virginia. I am not sure if Lieutenant Pullman was there, but he was in more than a dozen engagements, and so he very likely was. He was at the First Battle of Bull Run. He was in Chancellorsville and Antietam, so he probably was in Fredericksburg. And his tombstone in Albany Rural Cemetery up in upstate New York, it's amazing. It's a tall tombstone of a special design, and engraved on it is every single battle he was in and his last words, "Cease firing." Which
Really?
and
that's the title of the book.
That's the title of the book.
Yeah.
Willie had no idea that his final moments would be the title of a book, but
on his tombstone.
Yeah, exactly. He just.
I mean, that really stuck with somebody.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So he's at Hooker's headquarters, and not a lot happens in warfare typically in the winter.
Right.
So we just had the Battle of Fredericksburg, and then on New Year's Day in 1863, the Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation went into effect.
Yep.
Other than that, not a whole lot happening, so it's downtime, and it's bittersweet reading this because this was his last birthday. It was his 21st birthday. And Willie writes, to his sister, "This is the 10th of January, 1863, and I am just 21 years old. Strange how time creeps on. Although so many years have elapsed, yet does my whole life appear as a dream which can easily be recalled.
Welcome to the club, kid.
Yes, events of my earliest childhood seem as though they had happened but yesterday. However hard it may be to credit, yet it is the truth that scenes and actions of days spent in the far-off regions of heathendom are still fresh in my memory." That's a religious upbringing.
Yeah, right.
Heathendom. "I can almost imagine that I am again with father and yourself in the little boat, which, propelled by the strong arms of a Chinese boatman, slowly used to transport us across the harbor to the island of Kolong Zoo, where I collected shells and seaweed to add to my stock of playthings. I believe that I owe all my military hankerings to those same shells, for you know how I used to spend hours upon hours in forming my line of battle with buttons and shells. I little thought then that a practical demonstration awaited me. Then again, I remembered how I, in company with mother and our little brother, used to promenade backwards and forwards on the piazza, which overlooked the water. How that brother and I quarreled over our childish games. Then that sad event flashes up distinctly when that brother died and was laid out in his coffin awaiting burial. My last distinct recollection of the land of Cathay is the saddest. My last look into mother's coffin. Ah, what a loss that was. Many a tear have I shed in secret for the loss of that dear, sainted mother. Ever since I have arrived at man's estate, I cherish these memories of bygone days, and I think they soften the hardness of a soldier's nature."
Isn't that, that's so human that there's a certain point in our life that impresses upon us so much that much later we often think back on it. And obviously that's it for him. But that I can't imagine that because that was such a common thing, or maybe not a common thing, but it was more common than today, I think, in where a woman would die in childbirth. And also, infant mortality. Like, you had a lot of kids because they all didn't survive. You had to play the odds,
Right.
And here he's now, how old was his brother?
I am not entirely sure about that.
Like older or younger?
Let's see. Let me look it up in the chapter. I believe he was the third or yes, Willie was the third of 5 children.
Okay.
Only he and his older sister Mary survived past infancy. So,
and Mary was 2 years older than him.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
But he learned his letters first.
Yes. He was. It was noted that he was very bright.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned before how his father, after the mother died, I don't know if everybody thinks this way, but when I think of fathers in the 19th century, I don't think of them as doting or loving or playful. I think of that as a 20th century, briefly lived in pop culture caricature of a dad, right?
Yes.
Or in my case, it was real. My dad was that way. I don't know about doting, but he was loving and he liked to play with us and nurture our minds and our interests and things like that. But this dad really was that way. And, he chose to stay and be a missionary, but he needed his kids to have a mother's touch, and he recognized how important that was. So he sends them with their aunt. But the letter that he writes to his sister, it's his sister, not sister-in-law, right? Yeah, his sister.
Yes.
Yeah, because he says, "Dear sister." The letter that he writes to her, talking about how he misses the children and how he worries about them making it back to the United States. I mean, think of how scary that's got to be. I thought maybe he would have gone with them, dropped them off, said, spent a couple days, said goodbye. No, he sends them. Do you know if they were sent with a chaperone, or were they on their own, or did the ship line do some kind of chaperoning?
All we know is anything that's in the letter. So if he didn't mention it, then it sounds like they were just sent over to America.
And how scary for them too, the kids.
I know,
right?
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, the world was so different back then.
know.
I took my first solo flight on an airplane without my parents at age 13 or 14, but that's under close supervision,
Right.
and it was just to El Paso, Texas, from Arizona. So it was a very different world back then. But he was talking about how lonely he felt. But
that's where I was getting is he
Right.
missed them so much.
He did,
and he was like, if I'm not mistaken, he's like recalling, the traits of each one that he liked, and he's telling his sister, that Willie is better with his alphabet, and he's learning it before her, and she's not really interested, and she's kind of flighty, and she doesn't have a good memory,
right?
And I'm like, that's me. I'm the one without the memory and the flightiness,
right?
But yeah, no, I mean, so it was nice to see that. Because also that's the other thing that we have today, especially when depicted in pop culture, because that's where we see missionaries, is we don't see them as loving and kind. We see them as abusive people who do harm.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm sure there's truth in that, but we never see them as good people. They're never depicted that way. And so to read that, where this is a man with a heart who loves his children, he misses his children, I found that was refreshing to read.
Yes, because you're right. Fathers back then, I doubt any of them ever changed a diaper. It was not a very nurturing role. It was the man was the provider.
Right.
But yeah, he shows a very human side.
Yeah.
And so does Willie.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he's his father's son, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So go ahead, continue.
For sure. So, so Willie grew up in the Albany, New York area, and he decided he wanted to go into the family business. He wanted to become a missionary himself. And so he enrolled at Rutgers College in New Brunswick, New Jersey.
Yep.
He enrolled there in 1859. And so he was a year into college. And he was having a great time at Rutgers. He was a real popular guy. He had a lot of friends.
Going to the grease trucks. Do you know what the grease trucks are?
No, I don't.
Oh, I don't know if they still have them, but when I was in college, a couple of my friends went to Rutgers. We're from Jersey, so we would go down and visit them, and it was just all these food trucks, all in a line in a parking lot or wherever they were.
Oh.
And I mean, it was just the most delicious, but like you'd get a burger with onion rings, mozzarella sticks, French fries, all piled on top of it at 2 a.m. when you're drunk, and then who can eat that? But when you're drunk, you think you can. And then the things like this, it's like, how am I going to get this in my mouth?
Yeah.
But it was delicious.
Oh.
I'm sure they didn't have that back then.
No. Yeah, way before food trucks. But now the secession crisis started about a year after Willie got to school. And again, just to humanize him, even though he was in a very different time. I know when I was 19, 20, or early in college, sacrifice was not on my mind. I was relishing being on my own for the first time, being in college, partying, and just planning my future. So if a national crisis like secession or civil war were to occur, I sure wouldn't have been eager to sacrifice anything at that age.
Sure, no, of course not.
But Willie always felt a very strong sense of patriotism and gratitude to what he called his adopted country.
Right.
Even though his parents were American, he was born in another country.
Borneo.
Yes, and the secession crisis started when South Carolina seceded after the 1860 election, and he spent a time in intense prayer, saying, "What should I do, God? Tell me what I should do." And at the time, the president of Rutgers, he has a difficult to pronounce name, but I'm going to try. Theodorus Jacobus Frelinghuysen.
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 Jacobus Frelinghuysen.
Okay. He was
Because there's a I think it's a town called Frelinghuysen in New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's how I know it.
Okay, so that the president led a pro-union demonstration on the lawn at Rutgers, and he raised a flag and he said, "We must fight. There is no alternative. The rebellion must be crushed, and then we shall once more become a happy and united people." I will say that becoming a happy and united people was a bit idealistic,
Yeah.
but
we were united, but only on paper, and we're never happy.
yeah, we hardly said, okay, now we are besties now that this war is over.
Right.
But I certainly appreciate his sentiment. The rebellion must be crushed. There was very, very pro-union sentiment. That this was New Jersey, I think not far from New York City, right? New Brunswick?
Yeah, it's not a bad. It's kind of closer, if I recall, to Philly.
Okay.
It's more in that direct. No, I wouldn't say closer to Philly, but it's more in that. It's central Jersey.
Okay.
It's probably equidistant to both.
Yeah, I just remember I was driving out of the New York City area last year, and I passed by Newark, and I saw signs for Rutgers. Maybe it was a separate campus.
Well, I think they do have a few, but the one in I'm going to look it up now, New Brunswick, see where it is. But go ahead.
Okay, but yes, Willie decided he would enlist and fight. Now, at the time, I think most people north and south believed that this is going to be a very quick and easy war. And in the North, certainly they looked at the Confederates as a bunch of redneck renegades. You know, they don't even have a proper United States Army. So
Right.
so we're just going to go kick their butts, and this will be over in a couple days.
Yeah.
And so
It's to answer your question, it's closer to New York.
okay.
I didn't realize how close it was to New York.
Yeah, I just remembered seeing Rutgers signs when I was driving
Yeah.
through Newark.
It's way closer than I thought it was. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so it's a hard to say what a college student may have been thinking in enlisting to fight. Given how quick and easy most people thought this would be, he may have thought, okay, I'll be back in a few weeks.
Exactly. And then I
Right.
can resume my life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he may not have known, or
Nobody knew.
Right. Yeah. People may not have known what they were getting themselves into. I think when you join the army during any conflict, you have to know there's a chance you're going to get wounded or killed. But I think especially in the Union, they thought they would squash the Confederacy like a bug, and then Robert E. Lee comes along. And
Well, it's interesting because the Union seemed to have the same attitude that the British had against us.
right.
You know, like it's
Bunch
like
of red-
bunch of rebels. You know, like, rah, you know.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, we weren't even a proper army, you know. We
Right.
were like
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that I think that's a very good example.
Yeah, it's
That-
just an arrogance. So the Union had the arrogance before the war, before the first shot, or before the first battle.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Confederates, they also had an arrogance, but they kept it and proved that they were worthy of it for a while until
Right.
the Union got its head together and then said, no. What are we doing, guys? We are the better ones.
Mm-hmm.
Let's pull our heads out of our asses and fight this war and end it.
Right.
And they finally, that's the way I summarize it.
Yes, and the first Battle of Manassas was absolutely humiliating for the Union.
Oh, yeah.
It was. I mean, there were even people
There was an
watching. from the
audience.
hill. Yeah, there was. It was like they were going to the American Gladiators or something. And, and then they see the Union soldiers fleeing for their lives,
Yep.
and it was just humiliating.
Yeah.
So anyways, Willie left to Rutgers. Now the first regiment he joined was the 1st New Jersey Volunteers.
Okay.
Because he was living in New Jersey. He later moved to the Signal Corps. And I did not understand at first what the Signal Corps is, but it's pretty remarkable. I'm thinking they must have chosen unusually bright men for that role, because they were in a time way before walkie-talkies,
Yeah.
let alone texting or any kind of modern technology. The Signal Corps figured out ways to communicate to other army units
Right.
around it, and they would figure out ways somehow. It would be. It's my understanding it would be like in the movement of flags.
Yeah.
So?
So you would have different positions of the flags, and you would wave them, wag them. I forget what they called it. Was it wig-wag?
Wig-wag?
I don't remember, but it was really impressive. Years ago, a few years ago, I think it was 2018 for the anniversary. The park did something really cool. They had a group of people with a ranger at Meade's headquarters, and a group of people with just a group of people with a ranger at Meade's headquarters. No, I think there was some on Little Round Top. Doesn't matter. Point is, there was a signal station on Little Round Top. There was a signal station at Meade's headquarters, and they waited till it got dark, and they communicated not with flags but with lanterns.
Oh,
So they had these special lanterns affixed to a long pole,
wow.
and you could move it, and it was like on a swivel so that the lantern would stay the same, and you would move it that way, and that way you could communicate at night. But it was really neat to see because, with the naked eye, we could see from that distance this tiny little light just swaying in the darkness,
Wow.
and it was kind of almost eerie too, But and you wouldn't be looking with your naked eye. You would have a telescope or
Right.
binoculars or something. But apparently, there was a signal station on Jack's Mountain, which is out by Fairfield.
Okay.
And I'm under the impression, I don't know if this is accurate or not, but I'm under the impression that they were communicating with Little Round Top, among other locations. There were signal stations all over the place going down to Frederick, Emmitsburg, it was a chain of signal stations communicating because the Union Army had no telegraph communication because Jeb Stuart's cavalry before
Oh.
the battle cut it when he was riding around the Union Army. So they had to communicate through signal stations and send the message to, I think it was down to Frederick, where there was a telegraph office that could communicate with Washington.
Oh.
So that's how it's very impressive to think that they did, because we think about the people back then being simpler because they don't have phones in their pockets.
Right.
They don't have phones,
Right.
and and so they can't be intelligent because they don't have all the smart things that we have today. But in many ways, they were far more intelligent than we are because
Exactly.
they had to figure things out without that stuff.
Exactly. What kind of genius even invented the telephone? Where did you just come up with that out of nowhere? So I think
there's like an evolution of things that lead to these
Right.
big events or big inventions.
right. They needed a certain ingenuity to come up with all of these things. So yes, he moved over to the Signal Corps, and then later he joined a regiment with his home state. It was the 59th New York.
Yep.
And he was mustered in as a second lieutenant for Company H in October 1862. And just 3 months later, on January 17th, a week after his 21st birthday, when he wrote that letter I read, he was promoted to a first lieutenant. And soon after, he became the regimental adjutant. And the 59th New York, it had men from New York City, from upstate, and parts of Ohio. Now, I would have to ask a professor about this. I'm not really sure how that happens. I'm going to be giving a speech in Albany to a Civil War roundtable in September. I live in Western Pennsylvania. It's going to be like an 8-hour drive. And so before cars, how did people from Ohio get involved with the New York regiment? I don't know, but it was a pretty diverse regiment, and they were part of the Second Corps of the Army of Potomac that was led by General Winfield Scott Hancock.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were not here on the first day of battle.
Right.
That happened west of town. Hancock comes into play on the second day. And so the 59th New York was among Hancock's corps that were along Cemetery Ridge.
Interesting little tidbit about the 59th New York. So they used to do this thing called called the Adopt a Position program that the park used to do.
Okay.
It's like Adopt a Highway, except
Yeah.
you don't actually adopt the monument itself, but the area around the monument. And then twice a year, spring and fall, you're asked to go and clean it up.
Oh.
You know, debris like sticks and leaves and things, or
That's a good idea.
yeah, and I agree. And they discontinued it. But before they did, we adopted 3 monuments: the 69th Pennsylvania,
Hmm.
the 111th New York, which is the monument that's right behind you in that picture there, and it's also our logo. So this guy.
Oh, nice.
And the 59th New York, which is right next to the 69th Pennsylvania.
It's a beautiful monument.
It is.
It has a pyramid on top.
Yep.
And it's very close to the high water mark. So
Yeah.
so if you're standing there at the high water mark, looking at that brass book where
Yeah.
or bronze book
Uh-huh.
and facing the copse of trees, you just turn to the left, go at a diagonal line, and the 59 New York memorial's there. It has a pyramid on top.
Yeah.
And on the second day of the battle, the regiment that Lieutenant Pullman was in lost its commander, Colonel Max Thoman.
Mm-hmm.
He was he was a native of Germany, and my mother and grandmother were natives of Germany.
Okay.
So and I did a story for German Life magazine once about the contributions of German immigrants to the Battle of Gettysburg.
Oh, cool.
There were some regiments that were almost all
Yeah.
German immigrants, and they didn't speak a whole lot of English. So
Isn't that cool though about like the Battle of Gettysburg is that with your job as a journalist,
Mhm.
You can find a way to crowbar Gettysburg into anything that you can do, right?
And that's exactly what
Yeah.
I've been doing for years. I mean, it's how I finance my obsession with the Gettysburg. I number one look for a way to make it tax deductible, and actually while I'm here, even for my birthday, I got an assignment from Smithsonian. A magazine.
Nice.
It was kind of a last minute thing, so I'll be doing some research for that story.
Oh, that's cool.
And
What's it about?
I can't say now, but
Oh.
I will send you a link.
Okay.
And then I'm doing a story about one of the newer museums here for Pennsylvania magazine.
Okay.
That'll probably be in
Also secret, or can I guess? I think I can guess which one it is.
yeah, I don't like to say too much ahead of time because it's just,
How new is it? When did they
within-
open last year?
within the past 5 years.
Oh.
Let's say that. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm actually working on 2 stories, and that means it's tax deductible. And yes, my favorite journalism mentor of all time, who I worked with at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, her name's Lois. She was one of my editors, and she said in journalism you've got to zig where others zag.
Yes.
And so a general story about the Battle of Gettysburg and what happened over 3 days, that's been told a million times. I'm always looking for the different angle. And so with a German life, I thought, okay, is there anything German about Gettysburg? So I started researching it, and sure enough, you have all these German immigrants who fought. And they were very prominent on the first day. And there's
the 11th Corps.
Yeah, there's a story about Alexander Schimmelpfennig. That is a German name. It sounds like a sauerkraut brand.
It does.
And there's a story about when the Union line buckled on the first. He was running and he hid in someone's backyard.
Pigsty.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's one of the more interesting stories around town. So on the second day, Lieutenant Colonel Max Thoman, the commander of the 59th New York, they were there on Cemetery Ridge, and a shell fragment struck Lieutenant Colonel Thoman, and he had already been wounded in Antietam. It fractured his right shoulder, and he died from this wound just a little more than a week later on July 11th. And a guy from Ohio, Captain William McFadden, took over the 59th New York. Thoman is buried at Soldiers National Cemetery, and he is said to be the highest ranking officer who was a Gettysburg fatality, buried there, and you can see his name on the tall New York monument. And he said to his troops, "Boys, bury me on the field." So, and then on the third day, the 59th New York remained where it was on Cemetery Ridge, and when General Lee started Pickett's charge, which as we know was a disaster of epic proportions. The 59th New York was facing most directly. It was a regiment from Georgia, and it was on this day that Lieutenant Pullman was wounded twice. The first time he on the third day, Pickett's charge. So
Georgia was the second day.
No, on the third day, I believe. Oh, or was that the second day?
So they were facing Georgia.
The 48th Georgia. Excuse me.
That was on the second, and then the third was the Virginians.
Okay. Yes. Sorry. That was okay. My bad. Yes.
I hate to correct you there, but someone watching or listening would. So
okay. Okay. Yeah.
I could do it more nicely.
Yeah. Sometimes I need to review several times my own book. Right. The Pickett's charge was mostly Virginians. The 48th Georgia was the second day. So the 59th New York was there repulsing Pickett's charge. As the Confederates approached, a piece of shrapnel from Confederate artillery fire slammed into Pullman's left shoulder. That happened during the initial cannon fire, and his left arm was useless. And his men were saying, "Leave the battlefield, get down, get some help." And Willie said, "Not while I have my sword arm left." So he had the same fighting spirit that Max Tolman did. He said, "No, not while I can still do something. I'm staying here." And just an hour later, as the infantry assault happened, he was hit by a Confederate mini ball, this time in his right arm. So already his left arm is shattered. He got hit in his right arm by the mini ball, and we know how devastating the mini ball was to bones.
Careful what you wish for, Willie.
Yeah, it entered his right wrist and it passed up his arm. And he still refused to leave his men alone. He tied a handkerchief around his arm to keep it from bleeding. And I'm trying to think. Thankfully, I've never been shot, but I can only imagine it being shot in both arms, having both arms shatter. He must have been in excruciating pain. He must have lost a significant amount of blood. But he somehow managed to walk 3 miles to a field hospital after Pickett's charge. Now, I can't imagine walking any distance if I've been that badly wounded. He somehow walked 3 miles to the Second Corps Field Hospital, and some reports say that he fainted once along the way. I'm not surprised, and I'm not surprised I'm surprised he didn't die right there in the grass. And what this shows to me is that he had a very, very strong will, not only to fight, but to survive.
To live.
Yeah.
I mean, if I have a cold, I can't walk to the end of my driveway to check the mail.
I know.
And this kid's got holes in him and pain and blood, and I don't know how he could do that. I like your, let me read this paragraph here. Pullman, surely in excruciating pain, remained on the battlefield until the fighting was over. Then he walked to the Second Corps Field Hospital. Yes, he walked, severely wounded, for 3 miles. Deb Novotny, a friend of ours, licensed battlefield guide, and I drove the distance between where Pullman was shot and where the makeshift hospital stood. It's astounding to think he made it that far. By contrast, I once fell in an apple orchard and twisted my ankle, and I could only limp along a short distance. I love that.
True story.
I love that you add that in there. That's so perfect.
Like I said, I'm big on the. I'm a very
the
personal narrator.
touch. Yeah, I love that. No, but it makes it a personalized story. That's great.
Not everybody likes my writing style, and that's fine. But I really.
Who doesn't like your writing style? Who said that? Like editors?
I'm sure some people don't. Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, yeah, with editors, typically when I write for newspapers or magazines, unless it's a travel story, you don't get to use any first person. Here, this was my own personal project, and I said for my Geeky Chic publications, this is the inaugural book. It's my own publishing label. It's for my passion projects.
Yeah.
And after more than 25 years of experience as a writer, I'm writing from the heart exactly the way I want to write.
Isn't it?
And I don't want it changed or I don't want to write according to what to what this editor wants or that editor wants. This is just, these are my passion projects, and I want to tell it just
the way you want to tell it.
The way I want to tell
and
it.
That's the beauty of the modern age. Whether it's books or, like in my case, I always wanted to be in broadcasting, but I didn't want to play by somebody else's rules. I didn't want to. I'm terrible with time. So, like, I didn't want to be like, okay, you got 3 minutes in this break before you got to go to the song or the commercial.
Right.
I don't want to deal with that. And program directors and all these people, I don't want to deal with any of that stuff. And it just was so lucky for me that this technology came about where I can do it myself the way I want to do it. And lo and behold, I found an audience. Had I tried to do things like my way and gone the prescribed route, if you want to get into broadcasting, I would have had station managers right and left, program directors right and left telling me, you'll never make it. You don't. Nobody will ever like what you're doing.
Yep.
You don't. You're not doing radio. You're doing whatever.
I get it.
But here it's proving the old ways wrong. Nowadays, and here you can print your own book. And do it the way you want to do it. Be your own editor if you want.
Yep.
Or have friends, proofread it for you. And if you don't like what they say, tell them to go pound sand.
Yeah, I mean, nothing at all against editors. I've had some wonderful ones, but when you've been a journalist for 25 years and you've worked with a lot of editors, sometimes you just reach a point where you want to have a passion project and do your own thing.
Yeah.
And there, I guarantee there are many people who would read this and say, "Oh no, take out all that first person."
Yeah.
But I like it.
But
you like it too.
I love it. Yeah. No, I think that is because because we all have our Gettysburg place.
Yes.
Right. We all have the place in Gettysburg we like to come and visit. It has memories for us. It's special.
Right.
And so when you're writing this book about this place that's special to you from your visitations here or your visits here. But why stop there with the personal touch? Why not, the guy was shot in the arms has nothing to do with the ankle, but I think it's cute. I think it's cute that you put that in there. I mean,
thank you. And then the whole point of that anecdote was to say, look what a wuss I am.
Yeah.
And
again,
it's always about putting things, putting things in a context of the life we live in now, but what is the common thread that makes us human?
Yeah.
When you're shot, I'm sure it hurts like the dickens, and when you have two arms that are shattered, and yes, along the lines of that wuss thing, I'm always reminded when I come to Gettysburg. We talked about the modern world where we have it easier.
We are.
Well, yeah, I mean. These guys marched miles a day in wool uniforms under a summer sun.
Yeah.
They had clean drinking water was
they would have loved it.
Yeah, they didn't have bottled water or water treatment plants. And food was scarce.
Right.
I don't think a modern person would last a day like that.
I often wonder, unless you were, drinking out of a very rapidly moving creek that, is maybe flowing over mostly like rock or sandy, not clay and mud, you probably haven't really seen a clear glass of water. You know what I mean? Even if you're drinking out of a well, there's a cloudiness to it. We have well water at our house, and when we have a white bathtub, and when we take showers, or when I take a shower, I'll turn the shower on, and I'll see the water that's pooling down by the drain, and it's slightly discolored.
Really?
But it's a brand new system.
Wow.
It has a filter, but that's well water. Yeah.
Oh wow.
And I have a friend who has a farm down on Hospital Road. And same thing there. It's clear until you put it up against something pure like white or you put
Yeah.
it next to bottled water,
Right.
and then you look at it and you go, oh, there's a little cloudiness to it. So I mean, you imagine just pumping out of a well or just dropping a
Yeah.
bucket down to a well.
And you don't know where it's been. I mean, you don't know if an animal's peed in it or a person.
died in it, fell in it
Yeah.
and drowned. Yeah, well, you'll find
Yeah.
that out pretty quick, actually.
Right.
But yeah, no, you don't know, and and none of them, the bacteria,
Right.
parasites. It's a mess. But they had stronger constitutions than we do too. They had to have.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? Like, because they're born and raised eating and drinking things that aren't processed, they're not pasteurized.
Yeah.
There's no chlorine in the water. There's no anything.
Right.
So they had to have had strong. We have a weaker system now. I think we would
Right.
all drop dead if the whole infrastructure collapsed today and we had to go like live in the mountains and drink out of creeks. Half of us would die.
Right. Well, and that's why you hear stories sometimes of an American tourist drinking tap
Yeah.
water in a third world country and they get really sick.
Yeah.
Whereas the people there don't get super sick because their systems are used to
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So I think there's an evolutionary principle, for lack of a better
I
word.
think you're right, too, yeah.
Where the human body, we are not nearly as conditioned these days to take
Yes.
what these people took.
We're
years ago.
our systems are too pampered.
Yeah, and I'm thinking like, gosh, with no running water, modern soap, shower gel, deodorants, and I mean, people must have smelled really bad.
Yeah,
you know?
but they probably went nose blind to it. Like you wouldn't really know.
Exactly, you didn't
Because you all
didn't know.
smelled.
Exactly.
But you know what
So-
was funny though? If you read, I like to read about the Little Bighorn, and I'm interested in the Native American accounts, and I mean I'm interested in all of them, but I find them to be most interesting because we're only now looking into them to hear them. But when I've read stuff prior to that attitude coming about, they would still use, accounts from the natives. And oftentimes, what's funny is like the Europeans couldn't smell each other unless they were an extreme example, like the
Probably.
town drunk who sleeps in a pigsty,
Yeah.
like literally a pigsty, not a messy apartment, like, sleeps with the pigs. You could smell that guy. But they really couldn't smell each other.
Right.
The natives could smell us coming a mile if we were upwind of them
Oh.
because we just stunk. They could smell the soldiers coming. But the soldiers could smell the natives too
Oh.
because they stunk in a different way.
Oh.
So what I guess like there is the different cultures, the different foods, the different habits of bathing, what
Yeah.
you bathe with, fragrances, we cover up with, we mask our smells with colognes and perfumes and things,
Right.
and they did that back then too. And so everybody smells. It's just a different kind of smell, I guess,
yeah,
depending on
exactly.
what your culture is.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, the world was just beyond what we could conceive of
Yeah.
compared to the modern world.
And
But-
also, don't forget, these guys were 20 years old.
exactly.
Yeah, you could do a lot at 20. I think we forget that the things that we were able to do at 20 without batting an eye. Now, I haven't been shot twice and walked to a hospital, so I don't know if I could have done that at 20. But there's a lot of things I did at 20 where I try to do them now, and I can't do it for a 32nd of the time that I was able to do it back then.
Mhm.
So, there is that, and I think that's a huge thing to consider.
Right.
They're 22 he's 22 years old.
21.
He just turned 22, didn't he?
He was
In
20.
January?
He turned 21.
Oh, okay.
in January.
So he's 21 years old, and he's been at this for 2 years.
Mhm.
So he's conditioned, and he's young. And so he might have a little more in him than you or I,
Right.
who are used to, living comfortably, and I'm
Yeah.
45, so I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm
to
done.
be honest, I probably was pretty much a wussing in my 20s too, but certainly let's just say in my 20s it would have been easier to get up to the third floor at the Swope than it is now.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't have 21-year-old joints anymore. But
No, me neither. But, it's funny. You mentioned before about it must hurt when you get shot, And so I was imagining him walking. Funnily enough, I had a conversation today with a guy who got shot.
Oh.
And I didn't ask him. I didn't want to be like, did it hurt? Because that's. But I did glean from the way he described the aftermath and how he was behaving and the things that he did and everything like that was that he's not that it didn't hurt, but I think the body has its own way of numbing you, right? Numbing itself. And so I think, for a while, it might not hurt that bad. If you poke it, it's going to hurt. But I think for a while, the body kind of does its own thing to protect you. And so that might be why he was able to walk away and then he fainted.
Oh.
Because maybe the adrenaline and the dopamine wore off. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. But, I think, because I've heard these stories before. Here's another one. I remember my 8th grade teacher, her father was in World War I.
Oh.
And she told us a story about how when he was over there, he one of his buddies said, "Oh no!" So they get in a fight, and he thought he had pissed his pants. Okay.
Wow.
And he says to the guy next to him, he goes, "God, can you believe this? I just pissed my pants." And the guy looked down, and he goes, "You didn't piss your pants. You're bleeding."
Oh.
And what? And he goes and he looks, and he got shot through the side, and didn't feel it.
Wow.
So, and then he felt it. As soon as he saw it, then he felt the pain.
Oh. Yeah, maybe it's a shock thing.
I think there's certain things, it varies, I think, from every person, every situation, every weapon, the bullet type, the trajectory of the bullet, the speed, all this stuff. But I think there's so many factors that go into how different people react. Also, people have different pain tolerances,
Right.
But the point is that I don't think we, without having been in that situation, could ever really imagine what we're capable of doing.
Right. I think adrenaline is a thing.
Oh, it's a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes you think you would act a certain way in a situation, but you don't really know until it happens. But anyways, going back to Lieutenant Pullman's final days, he went to the Civil War, he went to the Second Corps Hospital. Yeah, we know he walked.
Now, where
there.
was that he walked to? Because you said you and Deb drove it.
Yes, it's like I mean I couldn't tell you how to get there again, but we drove. It's like in the middle. It's on National Military Park grounds, but it's
is it behind the cemetery?
Like I said, I couldn't tell you where it was. Again, it was
in the hospital. It was an aid station, right? Or was it the hospital?
Well, a hospital was just basically a bunch of tents.
Yeah.
But
that would have been further back. The first place you would go to was an aid station, I think.
Yeah, it was pretty far back. I would have to ask about that. I actually did this writing more than a decade ago. I had to set the manuscript aside until I could start Geeky Chic publication. So we visited this quite some time ago, but it was pretty far out there. And I find it amazing that he did not have either arm amputated. That was the treatment of choice.
Yeah.
Back then, and a few things about the Civil War horrify me more than the amputation stories. It just makes me sick to my stomach.
Oh, can you imagine having to do it?
Oh my gosh,
one after the other,
horrible,
after the other. Yeah,
horrible.
No.
I mean, I can imagine just having trauma surgery today under general anesthesia in a clean hospital.
Right.
It's a horribly traumatic experience. I can't even imagine what these guys went through, but he did not go through an amputation. We do know there was a nurse named Eliza Farnham. She was an abolitionist feminist who was way ahead of her time.
Yeah, really.
She dedicated her life to nursing after the Civil War started, and she was working at the field hospital. She met Lieutenant Pullman there, and we know from a secondhand source, it was mentioned in Mary Pullman's letter after Lieutenant Pullman died, that Eliza Farnham had been looking for him because she was wondering where he was. He was no longer in the field hospital. I think I think she worried he may have passed away. But he made quite an impression on her, and we don't know who moved him to the Swope house, but I'm thinking there were a few factors involved here. Number one, he was an officer, and a Civil War field hospital is such a horrifying place. Yeah. They probably just wanted him to have better quarters as an officer, but also John Swope, who was the second generation. George Swope was the patriarch. He was the bank president. John Swope was a doctor. He later became a congressman, and he also served time as the bank president. But at the time he was a doctor, he did not stay in medicine for long. But I believe he went to medical school at Penn.
Okay.
I believe he was an Ivy Leaguer, and he practiced medicine for a while. So he was taken to what Mary Pullman called, I believe, the grand mansion of the Swope. And the interesting thing about the address of the Swope Manor, it has a peculiar sounding address. It's 58-60 York Street.
Right.
And normally you don't have a hyphen in an address
Not
like
around
that.
Here,
and, yeah,
no.
and the reason is it's actually two houses that were squished together. The original one was 60. That was George Swope's house. And then John Swope built in what similar to what might be like a townhome or roadhouse style today.
Roadhouse.
Right. There was they shared a wall, and then the wall was removed later, and now
like a row house.
Well, that wouldn't be what they called it back then.
No, but that same idea where you have a common wall.
Yes.
With your neighbors. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
You share a wall, and later the house went through many remodelings and add-ons, and at some point that wall was removed, and now it's all one.
So the house that we see today is actually on the footprint of two lots. Or
originally it was, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then they just expanded it.
Yeah, and if you're standing on York Street and facing the front, the side on your left is the 58 side. The side on your right that borders Stratton Street, that's 60.
Okay.
And so Lieutenant Pullman was taken there to convalesce. And a lot of times people ask, where was he? Was he in the Lieutenant Pullman chamber, which is where I most often stay? That's on the third floor. I'm sure he was not there. That's they wouldn't take a wounded man up 3 flights of stairs. And at the time, that was the attic of the house, and it's probably where the servants stayed.
Okay.
So it was just attic space
Can you imagine that in the summertime?
Yeah.
I'm working all day, and then you got to go and
no air conditioning.
No, not even a ceiling fan.
Yeah. It sounds, the living conditions sound horrible, but
still a beautiful house.
100 years from now, what are people going to look at about us and say, how in the world did they live like that?
Yeah.
So we think Willie was probably, taken to a bed there, probably near where the kitchen is now on the 58 side. And one thing that really strikes me about the Willie Pullman story, the Civil War, and especially Gettysburg, is my favorite area of history. One of my other big ones is Titanic. And
me too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And in fact, just on New Year's Eve, I visited the traveling Titanic exhibit back home in Pittsburgh at the Carnegie Science Center, and I saw the movie on their IMAX film. And I should point out that I paid to see that at the theater 8 times.
You're talking the James Cameron movie?
Yeah, when in 1997, 98, I was totally obsessed with it. I paid to see it 8 times at the theater. They were showing it here. And
okay. So they were, I see.
Yes.
You 8 times when it came out, not 8 times at the exhibit.
No.
You're over it by now.
Oh, yeah. Okay. 8 times back in the 90s when it came out, because I was so into it. Well, I think, a contemporary example from a pop culture to describe what a Willie endured, I see a bit of a Titanic story. Not in the love story, but in the fact that even though Rose and Jack are fictitious characters, they survived so much and made it so far.
Yeah.
And they had a ferocious will to live. And so did Willie. I mean, he walked 3 miles with 2 shattered arms, badly bleeding and a lot of pain. And when he was taken back to the Swope, he was doing pretty well. He, John Swope had a surgeon come in to look at him, and they said he was doing well. He was healing, and in one of the letters, it said that this is such a cute and very, very, very old fashioned phrase. Someone said he was as cheerful as a cricket on the hearth. Now, I've never heard anyone say that today, but it's very cute.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Cute. Although that doesn't sound like I would be very cheerful if I was that cricket. You know,
Well, but he
sounds painful.
right, but he wasn't being sarcastic though. He said it's cheerful as a
Yeah.
cricket on the hearth. So, yeah,
It means he's dancing around like, you know,
yeah,
cricket. He looks like he's cheerful. He's really burning to death. His feet
Right.
are burning.
right. So,
But yeah, no, I know what he means.
right,
though.
right. So again, he had just made it so far, and it seemed like he was going to make it. So when just like on Titanic, when someone gets through that many obstacles and lives so long, when so many others are dying and makes it so far, somehow it seems all the more tragic and wrong when something goes wrong.
Yes.
and they die.
Yes.
It seems just even more wrong somehow, and even
It's
more tragic.
more tragic. Yeah.
And more shocking, because it really did kind of come out of the blue. He was steadily recovering during 10 days, and then a secondary infection and hemorrhage set in from his wounds on July 20th, and this is where ceasefiring comes in. They were his last words. In this secondary infection and hemorrhage, Willie became delirious, and he seemed to think during his final moments that he was back on that field with his men still directing him. And at some point during his final moments, he sat up in bed and he said, "Cease firing." And then he fell back
Isn't that amazing?
and he died.
There's so many of these last word stories with some of these Civil War guys where they're giving orders to somebody or yelling out a command or something. And
Yeah.
I mean, I would imagine if you're so engrossed in that type of stuff, or so ingrained in that lifestyle, or that lifestyle is ingrained in you, maybe. And, you know, your brain is dying and you're firing off just random thoughts and things like that and everything. I would imagine, and war is such a life-changing thing for a man and a woman too, if they go through it, that I would imagine that you wouldn't be like, you know, kiss the children for me, because that man is dead. The minute you first go into battle, that man dies. And then you become something you never wanted to be.
Right.
Or so I'm told. And so I guess it would make sense that you would say, cease firing, or let us rest, let's cross the river and rest under the shade of the trees, or, you know, whatever, whoever you want to yell an order to. It makes it, but it's just so, it's just so sad to think that your final thoughts before you go to meet your maker are of horror, because that's what it is. War is just horror. There's no prettiness to it.
You know, and maybe what was going on inside him, maybe what he was expressing was, "Oh, this war is terrible. Stop it."
Yeah.
Maybe maybe that's what he was feeling. I don't know.
I think we're giving him too much credit.
Uh,
He's
well-
dying.
Well,
Like those are his last words, you know?
well, right, but I mean, I'm just saying maybe that's some of where the word cease firing came from. He was saying, okay,
Like enough of this.
you know, he was thinking he was on the field with his men. Okay, stop firing, cease firing. Pickett's charge is over.
Right.
No
or
more.
like he's reliving the moment up until
Yes.
he got his second wound.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just,
it could be. Unfortunately, we can't ask him.
right.
You know, maybe someday we'll get to meet him, and we could ask him then. But until then, we're going to have to speculate.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think a lot of people. I mean, I know that sometimes war veterans who have dementia. I've met
Yeah.
some in a nursing home. Sometimes they will start talking as if
Yeah.
they're on the battlefield,
Yeah.
or if there's a female nurse, what are you doing here?
Right.
There's get out,
Right,
get out.
right,
You're
right.
you're on a battlefield. So it just could it just is a certain delirium that
I think
sets in.
I think it so messes up your brain that even dementia can't erase it.
Right.
Like like I said, the old you dies, and the new you, good or bad or indifferent, whatever that is, it takes over. And I think, and especially with the older guys, the World War II guys, and a lot of them didn't talk about it until the very end, if they did at all. And they kept that inside. And you ever talk to like the child of a World War II vet, and they had no idea what their father did in the war until like some historian told them, or they find out in some odd way
Right.
what their dad did. My friend Eric Dorr, he wrote that book up there, Fierce Valor. And have you seen Band of Brothers?
No.
Oh, it's a great series, but that's about one of the men in an Easy Company of the 506th Parachute Infantry, and his name is Captain Spears, and he fascinating guy, right? Very well portrayed in the series, but there's an anecdote in there. It's either in there or Eric told me it. I don't remember. But when the series came out, Spears watched it with his family, and they were like, "What? Who is this guy?" That they're they thought that Hollywood had just totally gone berserk
Yeah.
with his character. They just
Wow.
made up stuff about him because they're like, I can't picture him doing this at all. And he goes, no, that's what I did. But he didn't talk about it. He was, as a soldier, you might think he's kind of psychotic. But when he
Right.
was back in civilian life, he was a doting father and grandfather. Like, he was a good family man, and no one had a clue.
Mhm.
And because a lot of guys, they just didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
And so I would imagine, like, you get old, even if you don't have dementia, just, in those final days and everything, and
Sure.
you're looking back on things, that's stuck with you your whole life, whether you said anything about it or not.
Yeah.
And it's such a profound event in someone's life. I
It
think.
really
Yeah.
is. And Willie came from a long line of military men, also missionaries. Both his father and
Right.
grandfather were reverends and missionaries, but he had two great grandfathers who died in the Revolutionary War. And one thing you see in his letters, you just see such a strong patriotism. And it's important to know not all Union soldiers could be lumped in the same category as far as their motives,
Sure.
how they felt about things. There were a lot of Union soldiers who would flat out say they would never fight to free slaves,
Yeah.
but to preserve the Union. Some wanted no part of it, but had no choice because they were drafted.
Right.
Willie shows in his letters he believes very, very strongly in the Union cause. He has a great disdain for the Confederacy. He calls them traitors, and he believed very, very strongly in the Union. And he doesn't say much about slavery, but what I gather from his writings is that this is a young man who was willing to fight both a war of restoring the Union and to abolish slavery.
Yeah.
I believe he was one of the really good guys in the
Right.
Union Army.
Right. Well, like he was a convert almost. Like
Yeah.
well, maybe he wasn't a convert, but he went along with whatever the objectives were
Yes.
that the government put out, even if it was reprehensible to some other soldiers.
Right.
Like, which would be going from preserving the Union to freeing slaves.
Right. And
Yeah.
there were a lot of Union guys who were not on board with that. But
No. Quite a lot.
Willie was very gung ho about the entire Union cause, both defeating the Confederacy and the secessionists, the rebels, and abolishing slavery. I gather from his letters that he was that kind of soldier
Yeah.
who was willing to fight for other people's freedom.
I think that people need to be reminded that many in the North might not have agreed with owning people, black people, but that didn't mean they liked them.
Absolutely.
And so the one thing, if I could say in defense of the South, is the only difference between them and the North is that the South was willing to fight to keep them. But
Right.
the North wasn't doing it because they loved them. They didn't want them to be equals. They didn't see them as equals. They just didn't think you should own them.
Exactly.
Like we don't really we're led to believe that the North was just a bunch of bleeding
Saints,
hearts.
right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't that way. And I think sometimes there's a tendency for people to impose 21st century standards on
Yeah.
19th century
Tendency?
people.
I think it's more than a tendency.
And let me just say, I do not agree with the war on history crowd.
I don't either.
If you apply 21st century standards, nobody in the 19th century comes anywhere close.
Nobody ever. The
Right,
world began in 2020.
Right. And in fact, even the most progressive people of the time and the most compassionate towards people in bondage were the abolitionists.
Sure.
But there were even some abolitionists who probably did not believe in full citizenship.
Well, we had
for blacks. It was just too far of a leap for their 19th century
Yeah.
mind to take. But
Sure.
they were way ahead of what most people were. So this society evolves very slowly and in many steps. So getting rid of slavery was only just it was a huge thing, but
Yeah.
it was a very rudimentary thing. It was a whole 100 years later in the 1960s where you had the civil rights movement,
right.
and soon after slavery ended under Jim Crow and the Ku Klux Klan in the South, life was a nightmare.
It takes a
Then-
while, and this sounds like such a cop out, but it's true. It takes. Society evolves slowly because human beings evolve slowly.
Exactly.
Human thinking evolves slowly, and it would be great if we could switch a light, like flip a light switch, and change things.
Right.
Like, wouldn't it have been great if, when we won the revolution and everybody signed the Constitution, that we were able to flip a switch and live up to the ideals set out in the Declaration of Independence? That would have
Exactly.
been wonderful. But unfortunately, we are human beings are slow on the take, and that's all aspirational. But we get closer and closer to it with every generation, and that's the idea.
Exactly. And first black men got the right to vote.
Yep.
But neither white nor black women had the
Right.
right. It came in notches.
Yeah.
And yes, it would be nice if all injustices were erased at once, but
Yeah.
it's
You know what I think it is? It's because the people that are critical of the United States don't take it in the context of the world.
right.
They take it in a vacuum, and nothing happens in a vacuum. The United States was the new world. You know, it was part of it's the evolution of what was the new world. And so people who didn't want the old ways came here, but they
Right.
still only knew the old ways.
Right.
So it's one thing to put on paper, all men are created equal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's another thing to actually do it. Okay, yeah, I agree with you. We're all created equal. That's great. How does it work? What do we do?
Right.
What does tomorrow look like? Well, I don't know. But
Right.
well, you figure it out.
Right.
Okay, so we'll figure it out. And it takes 250 years, and we're still not there. And in another 250 years, if this country's even a country, we won't be there again. We won't be there still. We'll be
Right.
closer, but we'll never be there
Right.
because human beings are ugly.
What was that Martin Luther King Jr. quote? Something about the arc is long, but it bends towards justice.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it was something to that effect. And again, it's interesting how the 1960s, the civil rights movement, that was a whole century
Mhm.
after the Civil War and the end of slavery. So it was a very, very, very long time.
And I don't say that, you know, society evolves slowly because humans evolve slowly as a defense
Right.
of, you know, it taking another 100 years since being freed to get full protection of the federal government and the civil rights and all that stuff. defend that as if to say that was correct
It's
or
not-
that was right, but it was correct because that's how human beings work. Like
it's
there
not
was
the way
no
it
other.
should have been
No.
ideally, but it's
No, and
just the way it was.
And you look at the things today. You know, we have a lot. Where was I? We were driving up to Wilkes-Barre, right? So we're taking Route 81, which goes up over the mountains. I know even going out your way, taking the Pennsylvania Turnpike, there's a couple places where you see windmills up on the mountains.
Mhm.
Okay? Everybody knows windmills don't do shit. They don't work. You got to have wind. If you don't have wind, you don't have windmills doing
Right.
anything, right?
Right.
And they turn them off sometimes. They lock the brakes on them for whatever reason. I don't know why. But they're being put up all over the place. It's something that's being forced unnaturally. And the reason people resist it is because it's not efficient. It's not better than what we have now.
Yeah.
And to say, well, it's better for the environment, nobody understands what that means. You know what I mean? Like nobody gets that's a pie in the sky type of a argument.
Right.
It's intangible. We can't see it, we can't feel it.
Right.
You know, so it's the temperature's going to raise a degree in 100 years, whatever. Who was worried about that? None of us are going to be here in 100. You know, so it's the same thing with these other things. It's like if they had forced, the day after they free slaves, full equality and full citizenship and all those rights, the war wouldn't have ended. It would have kept going. They would have said, you know what? Pick those guns back up. Because that's the way people were back then.
Right.
I'm not saying it's right. It's the way it was.
Right. There's
Right. And so
is.
it unfortunately took 100 years because it took 100 years for cooler heads to say, enough of this shit. Like, they're
Right.
citizens. They're American citizens just like we are.
Right.
Give them all the rights and stop doing this to these people. And it takes a while for courage to show itself.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that the nation's founders and the authors of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, they had the right idea. They really did,
Sure.
but it took a few hundred years for it to fully come to fruition and for people to realize exactly what that means.
Right. And they still don't.
Right.
And they still, they take it for granted and they think it could be easily switched out for something else that would be better. I don't know. But but guys like Pullman. See, I thought you were saying last time you were on the show, I thought you were saying Pullman, Pull, not Pullman.
Pullman.
Yeah. Well,
It's like-
it's an accent thing. It's like
it's like Pullman, but
it's Pullman.
maybe a little bit more of an O sound
it is
than
an
a
old,
U
it's
sound.
a Pullman.
Yeah.
But when you were on the show last time, I thought you kept saying Pullman, and that's why we made a joke about Bill Pullman, the actor.
You know,
'Cause-
I mean, I don't know if I even hear much of a difference. It may be very slight.
It's a very slight difference.
And maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong. I
No,
actually,
I think you're pronouncing it right, but it's just, you have the Pittsburgh accent.
Well, I didn't grow up there. I didn't know if I
Where'd
picked
you
up
grow
any
up?
Pittsburghese. I grew up in Scottsdale, Arizona, and then I lived for many years in Dallas, Texas, and I had more of a southern kind of drawl when I had developed some of that when I moved to Pennsylvania, but that was a couple decades ago, so I have no trace of that.
So, but there's some kind of accent I'm hearing. What is that?
I don't know, just Gormly-ese, I guess.
It's your own unique accent.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a mix of all the places you've
Maybe
lived.
the West has no accent. It's just normal, neutral English.
Yeah.
So there is no Arizona accent. Yeah, there is a Pittsburgh accent.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah. People down in Texas think I sound very much like a Yankee now. So,
Oh, yeah.
So
You definitely sound like one of us. Yeah, you don't sound like
oh
one
yeah,
of us.
yeah. I am. I'm fully northernized. So that's the story of Lieutenant Pullman. I take you to his graveside in the epilogue, and it's, if you have a chance to ever go up to Albany Rural Cemetery, it's a beautiful.
Well, I want the listeners to know that this book is not only about Pullman. We didn't tell you the whole story. There's still reason to buy the book, Pullman is just a chapter.
He's chapter 3.
Chapter 3.
He's on the cover.
On the cover.
And
He's a cover boy.
Yeah, he's the most poignant story. But again, it's a soldier story.
Handsome kid.
Yeah, he was a handsome kid.
Yeah.
It's a soldier story whose life intersected with the wealthiest civilian family in Gettysburg.
Right.
And that's chapter 1 and chapter 2. Chapter 2 is about the house.
The house. You got the family in chapter 1.
Yep.
You got, and then part 2 of the book is now. So you have a then and now split in the book here.
Yes. Now is about the more recent history, starting with, I believe, later in the 1900s. We do know that.
Oh, there's a recipe.
Yeah, we do know that First Lady Maybe Eisenhower came over to play bridge.
No kidding.
With the Lefevre family that lived here in the 1950s.
What was so special about them? Because there's Lefevre Street here in town.
There was a doctor.
Uh-huh.
He
was just a prominent.
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about them, but I do know there was Dr. Lefevre. And in fact, I met someone in town, someone in her 60s, I think. She remembers going to Dr. Lefevre's office for vaccines, I think, as a kid.
And then also, folks, in Appendix A, for those of you who have a baker in your family, the creamy blueberry French toast casserole.
They make that at the Swope Manor, and it's really good.
Swope Manor. I'm going to bring this home, and we can't. We started the keto diet. I can't. Well, we could just replace this stuff with keto stuff. There you go.
Yeah, yeah. They have really good food there, and every room has its own theme. There are rooms that are named after Civil War officers. There's a Longstreet chamber on the first floor. Mm-hmm. There is the Colonel Chamberlain suite, the General Meade suite, the Lieutenant Pullman chamber, and there's a Lincoln suite.
Now we don't know that he died in the Lieutenant Pullman chamber.
Oh no,
do they suspect he did? Or?
No, that was the attic.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. They just wanted to name a room after him.
Got it.
So no, he would not have been up in the attic.
Okay. That would have been cruel.
Right.
Put him up there.
Right.
Kelly, best of luck with this book. Thank you for coming in. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
The big 3-9. Right? Again?
If you say so.
I hit it for the 6th time this year. So the name of the book, once again, is Cease Firing, Life and Death at the Swope Manor by Kelly Gormly.
Yes.
Where can they get it?
You can buy it at the Swope Manor, or you can go to my website. And I do not have a mechanism yet where you can directly order from my website. I'm working on updating it now. But my contact information is on my website. You can
What's
email
your website?
me. It's KellieBGormly.com. That's KELLIE, B as in boy, G as in George, ORM as in Mary, LY.com.
And they can contact you through there, and you'll mail one out to them or something? Okay.
You can send me an email.
You're working on a way to get it so they could just purchase it right then and there? Okay.
Yes, I'm not the most tech-savvy person, but I'm
not either.
Yeah, I'm working on updating my website.
Well, and folks, as you know, since you are patrons of my show here, you obviously are supporters of people who pull themselves up by the bootstraps and do it their own way. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure you won't mind having to do kind of the old-fashioned way, sort of, I guess, right? Order it the old-fashioned way. Contact you directly. Say, I'd like a book. Okay, what's your address?
Yes.
Give me some money, and then there's the book, right?
Yes, and I've already booked my next Geeky Chic project. Actually, I am departing from the Civil War theme for my second one. It is about another house with fabulous history, but this one's famous for something in pop culture, something more recent. And I'm writing about
the Wonderland murders.
I'm writing about the house, which is available for rental, and the filming of the movie. So that's
the filming of the movie about. Oh, is it Lizzie Boardman?
No. So that's all I'll say about that now. But I am also very.
Where's the house?
It's within a 500-mile radius. How's
of here?
Yes. Okay, so and I will say that I'm very much on the hunt for future projects. I am looking for my next historic inn after I'm done with this next project, and I hope to write about another bed and breakfast in Gettysburg, something that has a fascinating history and particularly one that I can tie to to a particular person, like
Yeah.
like Lieutenant Pullman, and inns that were used as a field hospital or as a general's headquarters, anything like that. I would love to write another few books like this.
Well, there's plenty of them around here.
Yes.
You just need to know which one to go to and find. I guess find whichever one interests you.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I'd probably be interested in all of them, but yeah, hopefully I'll find a couple more that want to have a book written about them like this.
I'm sure there are. Check out the Balladary Inn. Have you gone there? Balladary Inn.
no, what's that?
Supposedly it was a hospital, and there was mass grave under the tennis courts. So
Ooh.
they say.
Where is this?
This is on Hospital Road, which is Balladary. It's you know where what's the name of it? I can't remember the name of the house. The farm. It's the
Is it more in a rural area than in town?
Yes,
like the Swope?
it's south of town. It's what the hell is that big farm out there that the foundation owns, folks? Spangler Farm.
Oh,
George
okay.
Spangler Farm.
Okay.
So that's on whatever the hell road that is.
Yeah.
Blacksmith Shop.
Okay.
I'm
So
forgetting
more like
everything.
out in the battlefield area.
Yeah, it's right. So Blacksmith Shop, and then eventually come to an intersection. Hospital Road is there. Balladary is as soon as you get on Hospital Road, it's right there to the left.
Okay.
It's a nice place, B&B, Civil War house. Apparently it was a hospital. Apparently there's a grave there.
Wow.
But that's what I hear from the ghosties. So who knows, but it was a hospital. Anyway, once again, folks, cease firing. Is it the Silence of the Lambs house?
Well, the Silence of the Lambs house.
Where Buffalo Bill was? Or, yeah.
Well, like I said, I'm not gonna. I can't reveal any details about the next project, but I will let you know when it's.
All right,
Right.
fine. We'll just continue guessing, or we'll just wait, I guess. But again, cease firing, ladies and gentlemen. Kellie Gormly, kellybgormly.com is how you can get a hold of it, or go to can they call the Swope Manor and have them mail it to them? Would they do that?
No, they wouldn't do shipping. That
Okay, so
that would be from me.
Okay.
But if they want to buy a ready-made copy in person, they can go there.
Okay, right. So if you are in town, go into Swope Manor. Can you just walk in?
It depends on what time of day it is.
Yeah.
If you're there during check-in hours, then it should be open and there should be someone there.
Okay. Maybe call to see when you can
I
go
will
in
call.
if you're in town and go ahead and get a hold of it. But either way, interesting book. Quick read if you want, but good stuff in the back. You got a lot of letters in the back. Again, you have a recipe and all that other stuff. Kellie, thank you very much for coming on. Thanks you
for
all
having
for
me.
listening and watching and your constant support. We will talk to you next time.
Okay.
Thanks, Kellie. Thank you
thank
guys
you.
for watching. Eric says, thank you, Kellie. It's good to hear from a Pittsburgher. Even if you are an adopted local, FYI, Matt is biased against Southwest PA accents. That's not true. I am not biased against. He says, I'm going to plan a stay at Swope Manor sometime this year. And Eric guesses, he's the one who guessed the Silence of the Lambs house.
So, are we still on the air?
Yeah.
Or are we still recording?
Well, I could stop recording,
Oh.
which I just did, but I have to stop it. But
Okay. Yeah.
Wait, let me stop it here.
So there were some people who
See you guys.
So there were some